Hello, Jacksonites! Surprise! Welcome back to Super Cyborg Binge, a series that started at the beginning of this year with a re-review of RoboCop and RoboCop 2. I've decided to come back to this series and add a few more episodes to it. And since I've been binging all of these movies for the last week, I'm just in a mood for something fun. Today, I will be reviewing the not much maligned, but somewhat maligned 2003 installment, 20-year anniversary, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. Yes, indeed. So, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines is an interesting installment in the Terminator franchise because for a long time, Terminator 3 was one of the biggest examples of the Terminator franchise that would get picked on like absolute crazy. Um, and I do say it's much maligned. Well, it's not, again, not much maligned. Hell, every sequel in the Terminator franchise after part two is much maligned. But T3 in particular, for a long time, used to be picked on quite a lot. I've met a lot of people who have stated that T3 is their least favorite or one of their least favorite installments of the Terminator franchise. Trevor Boy, if he was still here, he would say this is his least favorite installment of the series. My friend Nate says that this is his second least favorite, I believe. Um, and I've never met anybody who says that this is their number one favorite. I was that one person at one point in my life. So my personal history for Terminator 3, um, I I was 6 years old when this movie was coming out. Terminator 3 was released um July 2nd, 2003. So I was 6 years old when this movie came out. And I do remember um a lot of the buzz that was surrounding this movie. I didn't see this in theaters. I did not see this until it was well onto home video. But I was very pleasantly surprised when I first saw this movie. Because again, I remember all the hype and all the buzz. I remember seeing TV spots and trailers and advertisements for this movie all over the place. Even as a 6-year-old kid, I remember thinking, "Damn, Terminator 3 is kind of a big deal." Um, so I saw this movie for the first time at my stepmom's dad's house. Um, as I've stated before, he is a fairly big fan of a lot of stuff that I'm into. Like he likes Alien, Predator, Terminator, Independence Day, Mission Impossible, Jurassic Park. He likes a lot of the same movies as I do. And when he first got T3 on VHS, he told me, "Hey, I got Terminator 3. You want to watch it?" And I was like, "Yes, please." And this wasn't long after I watched the original Terminator for the first time. Um, so I sat down and I watched T3, and I remember really liking it at the time. I thought it was a very good third movie. It gave me my Terminator fix and then some. And for a little while, I did consider Terminator 3 to be my favorite Terminator film of the whole series. And I also distinctly remember being very happy and proud of myself when I bought T3 on VHS from a flea market. So I had the Terminator trilogy on VHS all to myself. So I was really proud that like this was the first or one of the first franchises that I had bought with my own money that I completed. And then, of course, that would change pretty soon after that when Terminator Salvation was coming out, but that's for another story. And as the years have gone by, I did notice a lot of this movie's flaws. But I did always remain a staunch defender of T3. I always consider it to be a fun flick. It's a worthy Terminator film. And I think it's very overhated, as you know, the fucking Terminator fan base just loves to shit all over everything that's not the first two films. In recent years, however, mostly admittedly due to Trevor Boy's influence on me, Terminator 3 sadly has lost some value for myself. And at one point, actually, funny enough, when I did my review with Jackie Boy of T3 a couple years ago, I was pretty negative and down on this movie. And it was unfortunately kind of like because I defended the shit out of this movie for so long, but I hadn't seen it for so long. So when I rewatched it for my review with Jackie Boy, that's when the flaws really just hit me in the face. Well, not to shit on this movie on its 20th anniversary, which I'm not going to, after 3 subsequent rewatches in the last week, I can still proudly say Terminator 3 I do think is a fun movie. There's a lot to like about it, but unfortunately there is a lot to dislike about this movie. Of the whole Terminator franchise, T3 is the biggest mixed bag for myself. It has some high highs, but it has some low lows. Not the lowest of lows, but pretty damn close in my opinion. So yeah, to me it's a mixed bag. It's the most middle of the road Terminator movie. There's a lot to like, but there's a lot to not like. And I'll explain that um in due time. So again, T3 is a 2003 science fiction action film directed by Jonathan Mostow, who has directed. His directorial debut was the direct to video horror comedy Beverly Hills Body Snatchers. That looks stupid. Let's see. He's directed Breakdown, starring Kurt Russell. He's directed U-571, which is a submarine movie with Matthew McConaughey and Bill Paxton. Ha! He directed this, and he directed Surrogates in 2009. And he also directed The Hunter's Prayer, starring Sam Worthington. How about that? So he doesn't have a lot of stuff to his name, and this is probably his most well-known film of his filmography. The film stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Nick Stahl, Claire Danes, and Kristanna Loken. It is the third installment in the Terminator franchise and a sequel to Terminator 2 Judgment Day. In its plot, the malevolent AI Skynet sends a TX, played by Kristanna Loken, a highly advanced infiltrator model, back in time to ensure the rise of machines by killing top members of the future human resistance, as John Connor's location is unknown. The resistance sends back a reprogrammed T-850 to protect John and his future wife, Catherine Brewster. While Terminator creator James Cameron was interested in directing the third film, he ultimately had no involvement with T3. Andrew G. Vajna, that is a horrendous name, and Mario Casar, who had produced T2 through their company Coralco Pictures, obtained the rights for the franchise through the Coralco's liquidation auction and negotiations with producer Gail Ann Hurd, one of James Cameron's ex-wives. In 1999, Tedai Serafian was hired to write the first draft of the script. Mostow joined the project as director in 2001, and he brought on John Brancato and Michael Ferris to rewrite Tidai's script. The $187 million budget included a $5 million salary for Jonathan Mostow and a record $30 million salary for Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, they spoiled the fuck out of Arnold Schwarzenegger for this movie. T3 premiered in Westwood, Los Angeles, June 30th of 2003 and was wide released July 2nd by Warner Brothers Pictures. This being the first Warner Brothers era for the Terminator franchise. It received generally positive reviews and earned $433.4 million worldwide, finishing its theatrical run as the seventh highest grossing film of 2003. And I do believe somewhere saying that this was the most expensive movie ever made at the time. And it shows. And it was fairly successful. It even got really good reviews from James Cameron himself. Positive reviews, I mean, from critics, sure, hi, honey. But like I said, this one tends to be much maligned. Some like it, some hate it. It's very, very much like in those two categories only. Hi, Vic is here. Hello. So to reiterate, yeah, I think it's just kind of half good. Half good, half bad. Some really high highs and some pretty low lows. So before we begin, a word from our sponsor. Alrighty, and with all that being said, let us get into the plot of Terminator 3. Or no, as the trailers say, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. 10 years after destroying Cyberdyne Systems, John Connor, played by Nick Stahl, has been living as a nomad following the death of his mother, Sarah, to hide from the malevolent artificial intelligence, Skynet. Despite a war between humans and machines not happening in 1997 as foretold. Unable to locate John in the past, Skynet sends the TX, an advanced prototype Terminator made of virtually impervious shape-shifting liquid metal covering a metal endoskeleton back in time to John's present in Los Angeles to instead kill his future allies in the human resistance. The human resistance sends back a reprogrammed T-850 Terminator, a less advanced model covered in living flesh, to protect John and his future wife, Kate Brewster, of course played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. After killing other targets, the TX locates the pair at an animal hospital where Kate works. John becomes the TX's primary target, but the Terminator helps him and Kate escape, taking them to a mausoleum where John's mother is supposedly interred. Inside her vault, they find a cache of weapons left at Sarah's request in case Judgment Day was not averted and the Terminators returned. Sarah Connor was cremated in Mexico. Her friends scattered her ashes in the sea. They stored these weapons in accordance with her will. They escape from the armed battle with the police and fend off the pursuing TX. The Terminator reveals that John and Sarah's actions only delayed Judgment Day and that Skynet's attack will occur that day at 6:18 p.m. The Terminator intends to drive John and Kate to Mexico to escape the fallout when Skynet begins its nuclear attack at 6:18. John orders the Terminator to take Kate and him to see her father, U.S. Air Force Lieutenant General Robert Brewster. The Terminator refuses, however, when Kate also demands to see her father, the Terminator obeys. It is revealed that in the future, the Terminator killed John on the 4th of July. Happy 4th of July! After which Kate captured and reprogrammed the Terminator and sent it back in time. Meanwhile, General Brewster is supervising the development of Skynet for Cyber Research Systems, CRS, which also develops autonomous weapons. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff pressures him to activate Skynet and to stop an anomalous computer virus from invading servers worldwide. General Brewster fails to discover that the virus was Skynet becoming sentient, and John and Kate arrive too late to stop him from activating it. The TX fatally injures General Brewster and controls the CRS weaponized drones, which kill the employees. However, he dies, or before he dies, the general gives Kate and John the location of what John believes is Skynet system core. The pair head for the tarmac to take General Brewster's single-engine plane to Crystal Peak, a facility built inside the Sierra Nevada mountains. After a battle, the TX severely damages the Terminator, reprogramming it to kill John, and pursues John and Kate through the CRS facility. When a particle accelerator is activated, it magnetically binds the TX to the equipment. The still conscious Terminator struggles to control its outer functions. As it prepares to kill John, he urges the Terminator to choose between its conflicting programming. It deliberately forces a shutdown of its corrupted system, enabling the pair's escape. Shortly after they leave, the Terminator system reboots. Meanwhile, the TX escapes the accelerator and resumes pursuit. After John and Kate reach Crystal Peak, the TX arrives by helicopter, but before it can attack, the Terminator arrives in a second helicopter and crashes into and crushes the TX. She pulls herself from the wreckage, losing her legs in the process, and attempts to drag herself inside the bunker to follow the pair. The Terminator holds the bunker door open long enough for the pair to lock them inside, then uses its last hydrogen fuel cell to destroy both itself and the TX. You terminated. John and Kate discover that Crystal Peak is not Skynet's core, but rather a nuclear fallout shelter and command facility for government and military officials. Having no core, Skynet has become a part of cyberspace after becoming self-aware. Judgment Day begins as Skynet fires nuclear missiles worldwide, starting a nuclear holocaust that kills billions. The pair begin receiving radio transmissions on the emergency equipment, and John tentatively assumes command by answering radio calls. And they reluctantly, forcibly so, accept their fate, thus ending the film on a pretty down bleak note. Hmm. So, how about this plot? Well, like I've said, there's a lot to like here. As for other people like myself, as few of them as we are, who champion the rest of the Terminator franchise, if you just are a Terminator fan and you just want them to rinse and repeat the same formula of two Terminators battling back in the past in order to prevent the future, this movie gives you exactly what you want. It brings back Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator. There's lots of big action scenes. There's lots of robot violence, lots of special effects, and all that jazz. Um, So all the ingredients are here in order to make a Terminator fan as happy as possible, theoretically. But unfortunately, this movie is held back by some poor casting, some lazy writing, and some questionable choices. Um, but again, as a Terminator fan who champions the rest of the series, there is a lot to like here. So with all that being said, I have I have 8 pros, 2 nitpicks, and 7 cons. Pro number 1 is the big budget. Again, this movie cost $187 million, making this the third highest budgeted film of the Terminator franchise. And it shows. Warner Brothers was really pulling out all the stops in order to make a solid Terminator sequel. And in terms of its budget, for the most part, it definitely shows. This movie looks very polished and and slick. It's got big actors, relatively. It's got lots of special effects, lots of big bombastic action scenes, and it has this really big, doomy, apocalyptic feel. And I think the big budget certainly does help. This will mostly lead into arguably the biggest pro that this movie has. Pro number 2 is Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, as the Terminator, the T-850 as he is in this film. Um, to quote James Rolfe from his review of T3 back when Salvation was coming out, Arnold steals the show and is as fascinating as ever. And yes, this is true. If you want to watch this movie for Arnold Schwarzenegger, you will not be disappointed. Trev really is right in saying that the first 3, really no, every Terminator film that he's done has had a significant impact on his life and film career. The first movie, of course, was the one that um, really launched his career and made him a household name. T2 gave his career a second wind throughout the 1990s and added an even further level to his superstar power. And T3 was Arnold's final film before he entered the world of politics as the governor of California for 8 years. Um, and Terminator Genesis was not his first movie back in Hollywood, but it was his first big return to Hollywood. He done Expendables 2 and The Last Stand, but Terminator Genesis was the one that fully brought Arnold back into the Hollywood spotlight. And Terminator Dark Fate seemingly is Arnold's final performance as a Terminator in the Terminator franchise. So, yeah, that's cool. And for T3 being his final film for 8 years, it was certainly a good movie to go out on. Arnold is fucking jacked in this movie. So in the audio commentary, Arnold said that he had a lot of concerns for his physical appearance and wanting to stay consistent with how he looked physically with the first 2 Terminator films. And I will honestly say, of the first 3, I think Arnold looks his best in this movie. Um, it does help that the T-850 is slightly stronger than the regular T-800 as he was in the first 2 films. And I think Arnold is a bit bulkier physically than he was in the first 2. And I think that's a happy accident, but Arnold is fucking jacked in this movie. Um, he ended up he brought himself to a weight of I think 223 pounds. Um, And Arnold was fucking 56 years old when he did this movie. And he doesn't look a day over 40, in my opinion. Arnold is just fucking very inspiring seeing him in this movie. Um, and again, if you want to watch this movie for Arnold Schwarzenegger, you will not be disappointed because he literally and figuratively is the highlight of the movie. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's a total badass powerhouse in this movie. He is really funny. He's really clever. He's fun. He's just a sight to behold watching this movie. Arnold kicks all sorts of ass, and even though he does get his ass kicked a little bit towards the end of the movie, Arnold is just so much fun to watch. Um, yeah, couldn't have asked for a better performance. Not my favorite performance of Arnold's as the Terminator. Probably either go to Dark Fate or T2, not to be stereotypical, but yeah, Arnold is the highlight of the entire movie, in my opinion, in this film. Um, Pro number 3 is the TX, or the Terminatrix, as I think she's called. Yeah, this movie is really trying to rip off the Matrix. Um, there was a lot of people talking shit about the Terminatrix for a long, long time, especially when it was just the first 3 Terminator films. People were saying, "Oh, that's the one that has the girl Terminator." Now, okay, yes, I would not be surprised if one of the biggest reasons why the TX is female in this movie is purely just for sex appeal. Yeah, that probably is true. But even still, in hindsight, I'm gonna stand by this. I think of all the Terminators that we've seen in the Terminator franchise, the T600, the T800, the T900, T1000, T3000, the Rev 9. I think the Terminatrix is the most powerful infiltrator unit that we've seen in the entire Terminator franchise because she's a perfect blend of the most powerful elements that we've seen and the most advanced elements that we've seen in previous Terminator models. The TX is a freaking juggernaut, just like the T800 and T850. And she also has onboard nanotechnological abilities, being able to control other machines, and she is also polymimetic, being covered in a sheath of liquid metal, being able to shapeshift her appearance in order to mimic anybody that she sees or touches. And she also includes onboard weapons. She doesn't need to scavenge for, ooh, that felt good, pistols or shotguns or whatever in order to accomplish her goal. She can just morph her arm into a plasma cannon or a flamethrower or a buzzsaw if she wants to. Or hell, if she wants to, she can just ram her fucking fist through someone's chest if she wanted to kill them. So the TX is a complete savage in this movie, and she is a total powerhouse. And I will stand by, most powerful Terminator we've seen in the whole series. Um, yeah, I love it. She's badass. She's threatening. She's imposing. Maybe not quite as. I don't think she's perfect, mind you, because I think the Rev 9 and the T1000 were much better at blending in and passing as humans. Um, and I think that the T850 and T800 could pass like physically because they have flesh and blood, can much more easily pass for humans. Um, and she doesn't have the ability to split into endoskeleton and liquid metal form like the Rev 9. But still, overall, and also charismatically, she doesn't quite have the threatening menace of the T-1000. Like, she doesn't have an ounce on Robert Patrick, but I think her physical capabilities and her like dead stare and cold face makes up for the lack of that and truly does prove herself to be the most powerful Terminator in my opinion. Um yeah, I love the TX. Pro number 4 is this movie's humor. Um I don't know if I fully agree with Trev saying that this is the most campy Terminator movie. It's either this or Terminator Genesis. I mean, it's kind of neck and neck, honestly, because Genesis is allowed to be a lot more campy due to its PG-13 rating, but this one also has some pretty campy moments. There's some funny sound effects. There's some funny innuendo jokes, like when the TX grabs Arnold Schwarzenegger's crotch and he just gives her the side eye. Um, but yeah, I would definitely say that this is the most. Nah, I think it's tied with Genesis as both the funniest and the campiest. Another reason to love Arnold Schwarzenegger in this movie so much is that there are a lot of really good one-liners from Arnie. Um, I'll just list off all my favorites. Well, the first one in and of itself, when the Terminator or Macho Man, as I'll call him, to again quote Trevor Boy, when Macho Man arrives at this bar in the middle of nowhere in order to get clothes, um, he walks up to the bouncer and he just looks at him for a second and says, "You're supposed to go around through the back." And then he barges his way into the bar and he looks around and he sees a sign that says ladies night. So it's kind of like a funny inverse of the bar scene from T2. He's walking around and all these women are just ogling him and admiring him and cheering him on. Then he looks up to the stage and he sees this stripper dancing around in all this black leather. So he walks up to the stage and says, "Take off your clothes." "Patience, honey." Throws a glove at him. Arnold gets up on stage and says, "Your clothes." And then the guy goes, "Talk to the hand." So he grabs his hand and just says, "Now." um, so he leaves the bar in the stripper's clothes, and then he goes to put on his sunglasses, and they're not regular shades. They're fucking red, starry Elton John glasses. So then he just crunch. A lot of people don't really like that scene from what I've heard, but what the hell is there to not like? It's funny. I mean, sure, it's stupid as fuck, but sometimes dumb is funny. What the hell is wrong with that? Um, the next funny one, in my opinion, is this one's really minor, but when the Terminator is chasing down the TX and he gets smashed into a fire truck, his glasses are all fucked off, and so he just yanks them off and goes, "I'll drive," and then commandeers the fire truck. Um, he then hops onto the crane that the TX is driving and just goes, "Excuse me," and yanks her out of the train with a fucking fire axe. Um, that one might seem kind of minor, but that one just kind of still cracks me up to this day. Um, one of Meadows' favorites is when they've evaded the TX for the moment, and Arnold gets to John's truck. He goes to check on Catherine. He goes, "Catherine Brewster, have you sustained injury?" "Drop dead, you asshole." I'm unable to comply. um, Meadows' second favorite is later when John says, "So she's an anti-Terminator. Terminator? You've got to be shitting me." "No, I am not shitting you." One of my favorites is when he's at the 2003 as fuck gas station, and he just goes to start walking out with a whole bunch of gas station food. The clerk goes, "Hey, are you gonna pay for that?" "Talk to the hand." T is for talk to the hand. And my favorite funny scene of the whole movie, um, when again they've evaded the TX for the moment, when Arnold is driving the hearse around with all the weapons in the coffin. Um, the top of the hearse gets shaved off because he goes under a semi truck, smacking the TX off the hearse. This car is just totally fucked the fuck off, and it's like making these clanking, scraping, and screeching sounds. And Arnold just goes, "We need a new vehicle." Master of stating the obvious. Arnold's hilarious in this movie. A lot of the humor is stupid, admittedly, and it's like funny because it's not funny type of humor. But to me, it's just funny. It's like it's so funny that it comes back around to just being funny, or it's not funny to the point where it comes back around to being funny. It's a lot of, yeah, just stupid humor. And I love it. I think it's hilarious. Um, yeah, this movie's quite funny. Pro number 5, um, on the complete opposite of my last pro, this movie is quite violent. Um, I don't think this is the most violent of the entire franchise, but there are admittedly some quite shocking and visceral scenes that definitely earned this movie its R rating. This was the last R rated Terminator movie for a long time, not counting the unrated cut of Salvation, which has barely a minute's worth of additional footage. Um, this was the last R-rated Terminator movie for 16 years, and it was a good one to go out on. When people get shot, they crumple to bits with bloody squibs. There's lots of language. There's lots of gunfights, and this might have one of the high. No, technically, no, it does have the highest body count because of the nuclear war at the very end. But this has one of the biggest body counts for the whole um, Terminator franchise. But this might have two of the most shocking Terminator kills of the entire franchise. The first one is when TX kills Scott, Kate's fiance. We don't see it, but she presumably morphs her hand into a buzzsaw, and you hear Scott scream, and she cuts him down, and there's a big spray of blood across his family photo. It's very abrupt, visceral, and yeah, shocking. But the most shocking scene in the entire movie is when the TX disguised as Scott is being driven to track down Kate by two police officers. So she just rams her fucking fist through the back seat of the driver's seat and impales the fucking police officer on her arm. And then she like backhands the other cop and smashes his face into the um, window. And her arm is slathered and dripping in blood. And the guy is just sitting there going, It's messed up and fucking savage. Yeah, shocking. Sums it up very well, in my opinion. Um, Not much to say about that, but I do appreciate this movie's violence. This was the last bit of it that we got for 16 years, so take it for what it is. Pro number 6, or no, hang on. Okay, yeah. Pro number 6. This is also kind of a brief one, but the music score for this film is decent. This isn't one of my favorite scores for the Terminator franchise, but it's still decent for what it is. So the music was done by a guy named Marco Beltrami. He is a American composer, conductor, and pianist, best known for his film and television scores. He worked in a number of genres, including horror. He did the music for Scream, Mimic, The Faculty, Resident Evil, The Woman in Black, A Quiet Place, and the upcoming The Nun 2. Action movies, Terminator 3, Live Free or Die Hard, and World War Z. Science fiction, I, Robot, and Snowpiercer. And superhero, Hellboy, The Wolverine, and Logan. Hellboy 2004. Okay, so he definitely has a long, varied career, which now that I think about it, oh wow, he did Blade 2, um, Die Hard 5, which is a piece of shit. And he co-composed Fant Four Stick with Philip Glass. So yeah, he definitely does have a very long career. And his music here, again, it's not my favorite score for the Terminator franchise, but for what it is, a lot of it is pretty standard action movie music, which is fine because this movie is a big action movie. A lot of the music is very loud and brash and bombastic. It gets your blood pumping and it fits all the action scenes. It makes them feel a lot bigger and more action packed. There are a couple poignant music cues too, like to show one is there's a very subtle hint of music when we discover Sarah Connor's grave that's a bit melancholy and sad and emotional. And this technically is a good thing. At the very end, when Judgment Day occurs, the music is very somber, mellow, and kind of bleak. And that helps hit home the ending of it being a big call to destiny moment. So I don't like the ending very much, but the music does do what it's supposed to do. Sadly, this movie does not use the Terminator theme until the end credits, which sucks. And that's ultimately why I don't like this music score as much. I do like it, but just as action movie music. As Terminator music, I do think it's kind of lacking. But at least this movie has uh, the full Terminator theme somewhere in its score, unlike the next movie, which sucks. Um, Still, though, it's good music, just not great Terminator music. Speaking of which, though, pro number 7 is the great action scenes in this movie. Again, aside from watching Arnold Schwarzenegger, if you want to watch great Terminator action, this movie's got you covered. There's quite a bit of action scenes in this movie, and all of them are very high octane, explosive, bombastic, and entertaining as fuck. There's the first action scene, which is the first big chase of this movie with the TX and a giant crane chasing after John Connor in a little Toyota Tundra truck. And then Arnold's chasing after them on a police motorcycle. And she is also in control of a bunch of other, like a couple fire trucks and ambulance and a couple cop cars chasing him down, knocking him aside left and right. They're bashing through buildings, bashing through cars, fences, garbage cans, fucking shit up left and right with all these cars. And when Arnold catches up, uh, he hangs onto the crane, and the TX turns the crane arm around and demolishes multiple fucking buildings, including a big office building. And she just fucks shit up left and right with this goddamn crane. And this scene, Arnold Schwarzenegger himself actually had to fight to keep in the movie because they wanted to cut this scene for budgetary reasons. But Arnold used some of his own money in order to finance this scene to keep it in the movie. And I definitely support him on that decision because honestly, it's one of the best action scenes of the entire Terminator franchise. And I love it. It's very explosive, very loud and bombastic too, which I love. And it comes to a literal big crashing explosive finale when Arnold commandeers the crane and he releases the crane hook down to the sewer so it finally runs out of cable, and this like 50-60 ton crane gets yanked down to the ground and flipped over onto its back and just fucking bloom. It's awesome, loud and explosive, and I love it. Next is the shootout with the SWAT team at the cemetery, which is kind of short, but it is still uh, entertaining and bombastic too. You have Arnold just coming out with a giant, like 500-pound coffin filled with a whole bunch of guns and ammo, and John Connor, and he starts getting fired at by the SWAT team. So he turns around with this big ass machine gun and he just starts mowing down all these cop cars, blowing a couple up here and there. And during that scene, fun fact, Arnold got his first injury on set. He was holding the coffin, and under his hand, there was a squib that went off under his hand and about blew one of his fingers off. Thankfully, it didn't, but yeah, that laid Arnold out for a little while. Then the best action scene of the whole movie, in my opinion, is Arnold versus the TX at the very end. Arnold tries as hard as he can to take down the TX. And they're just beating the ever living shit out of each other. They're kicking and throwing and shoving and punching each other through walls like marble concrete walls. Arnold rips out a gas tank and smacks the shit out of the TX in the face. Then he rips off a urinal and shatters it over her back. And then he grabs hold of the TX and just starts smashing her left and right into bathroom stalls and tosses her across a fucking room. It's a little funny too because she gets back up on her feet. She kicks him in the balls and then grabs him around his crotch and just lifts him up and pile drives him through a fucking wall. And it's ended with pretty viscerally too. With the TX setting Arnold's face on fire and then kicking off Arnold's head so that it's hanging by a thread. And then she proceeds to try to reprogram him herself. That's about it. Well, I guess the last one technically counts as the last scene counts as an action scene, but it's really short. But when the action is going, it's pretty damn good. To quote James Rolfe, watch it with a good sound system, and it's a real wild ride. And it's yeah, entertaining as hell. Again, if you want to watch this movie for its action scenes, you won't be disappointed. And finally, pro number 8, the special effects in this movie are pretty damn fucking awesome. 95% of the time, the effects are awesome. Hold on. The film features more than 600 special effects shots. Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, and Stan Winston created the special effects as they had done for the previous film and also the first movie. Stan Winston created all the Terminator special effects and also designed the T1, an early Terminator machine that appears in the CRS facility near the end of the movie. And he also worked on the TX and the T800 or T850, I should say. But to talk about the T1s, sure, there's probably a couple shots where there are CGI T1s, which are essentially just drones on tank wheels with machine gun art, like minigun arms. But most of the time, they are real. Stan Winston created 5 full-sized functioning T1 robots, each one controlled by hydraulics. And they all look fantastic. They look like real robots. They move like robots. They just are living, not really living, but full-on robots going around gunning people left and right. They're very simple, but at the same time, they still are kind of a bit spooky in how primitive and crude they are, but they also are imposing because yeah, these aren't much on their own, but um in like swarms and groups, the T1 surely are a huge problem because they're all equipped with twin miniguns that fire a shit ton of bullets. Um yeah, I love the T1s. Simple but effective. Stan Winston also designed the TX's endoskeleton frame as well as her weapons. Certain sequences involving fire and explosions were deemed too dangerous for Schwarzenegger and Loken to perform, so Winston and his team constructed life sized robot replicas of the actors. When the start of production was delayed from its earlier 2001 date, it allowed Winston a lot more time to develop the various effects. ILM used a lot of miniature sculptures and computer generated imagery to create numerous effects for the brief scene set in the future, depicting the post-apocalyptic war between humans and machines. A lot of the T800s that are seen just shooting off their guns and looking imposing, all of those are CGI, but that's fine because they all look absolutely fantastic. A lot of it has to do with the dark lighting, like this on the disc. That's from that scene, and they're all CGI, but they all look great. A lot of it has to do with the really dark lighting, and there's a lot of smoke and fire all over the place. So that kind of it doesn't hide that they're CGI, but it does make them look a lot more realistic and a lot more scary and imposing. So that's great. Um, there was one challenging scene for the visual effects team that took place at the cemetery where the TX morphed into her original appearance. This required a lot of repeated shots of the same area with the use of controlled cameras. And another difficult scene was when the TX's liquid metal exterior was peeled off by the particle accelerator to reveal her endoskeleton. Um, let's see. So this is the point in the Terminator franchise where, of the first four, I do think there is a pretty decent mix of practical effects and CGI. And thankfully, because this movie has a huge budget, a lot of the CGI does look very good and holds up quite well, especially 20 years later. But it definitely was when they were starting to lean a little bit more towards having a lot of CGI for the effects. But thankfully, Stan Winston and his practical magic does not disappoint. Mainly, there's one scene when the TX punches her way out of a pile of rubble, and it's a fully animatronic Terminator hand. And it looks great. It looks like a real Terminator arm moving around and wiggling its fingers. Um, all of the scrapes and cuts on Arnold's face, revealing his metal skeleton underneath, are all practical and they look great. When Arnold has to cut himself open in order to remove one of his power cells, there's something there too. For this scene, Winston's team used cyber scans to create a body cast replica of Schwarzenegger that would sit in the driver's seat, and Schwarzenegger was situated in the back of the truck, and his head and arms were visible in the front seat to give the impression that he was connected to the body cast. And I think it's perfectly seamless. It actually looks like Arnold is cutting open his chest and removing one of his fuel cells. I don't see any flaws whatsoever, in my opinion. Um, and there are some practical shots of the TX's endoskeleton form. They're mostly saved for the very end, and they're kind of brief, but you can still tell when it is practical. And all the practical shots look great. Um, Again, given that Stan Winston stamp of quality, it's all really damn good. And when Arnold is like all fucked off at the end of the movie, where a lot of his flesh is torn and burned away, revealing a lot more of his endoskeleton underneath. I have seen behind the scenes footage where Arnold has a whole bunch of green fabric all over his body. And in the final movie, I think it's seamless. It doesn't look cartoony. It looks like a real Terminator that has had a lot of its disguise torn away. I think it's flawless. There might be one or two shots where mainly around Arnold's mouth area because you can see a lot of the internals on his skull, but you don't see them in his mouth. But still, whatever. It still looks really, really damn good. Overall, again, 95% of the time, the special effects in this movie are absolutely top notch. Great CGI, great practical work, lots of great explosions, lots of gunfire and animatronics galore. This movie's effects are outstanding. Some of the best effects of the whole Terminator franchise, honestly. Probably in some ways better than Salvation, honestly. Um, so I do have two nitpicks, and I'll just get through them real quick. Nitpick number one is I do think this movie is both too short and the pacing is too quick, in my opinion. It flies by like a million miles an hour. It's kind of a bit like Spider-Man 3 in hindsight, where the movie just never stops. That can be a good thing. It does make this movie very easy to sit down and watch. But at the same time, I just kind of feel like most of the movie, the pace is just on fast forward. It just wants to keep going and 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 going until the very end. Um, and that really just depends on my mood. But generally, I do think this film is too quickly paced. I wish that it was a little bit longer and it took some time in a few of its scenes to let itself breathe. This could also add into one of my biggest flaws with Terminator 3. Speaking of which, I again have 7 cons. So let us get into them, shall we? Con number 1 is John Connor. Now, I don't know of any other movie that Nick Stahl did in his career. Let's see. Oh my God, he looks like William H. Macy. He gained recognition for his performance in the 1993 film The Man Without a Face, co starring Mel Gibson. Oh, it was Mel Gibson's directorial debut. Huh. He later transitioned into films like Disturbing Behavior, The Thin Red Line, In the Bedroom, Bully, Sin City, the HBO series Carnival in the role of Ben Hawkins, and he also starred as Jason Riley on the AMC series Fear the Walking Dead. Okay, so he does have some uh, credits to his name. I just haven't seen anything else. Oh, damn. Hmm. So, and he's not necessarily a bad actor, but oh my God, he's just not John Connor. And John Connor himself is a complete joke. This is not Edward Furlong's adult John Connor, in my opinion. He's a complete whiny, sniveling little bitch throughout this movie. Okay, he's somewhat kind of sympathetic a couple scenes because he doesn't want to lead the humans against machines, not like because he just doesn't care. He just doesn't want the world to end. He doesn't want that gargantuan responsibility put on his shoulders, and he just doesn't want to fight a war. So that's a bit understandable, but the entire time, he's just trying to run away from his problems. And when he literally has another Terminator coming to protect his ass from another Terminator that's trying to kill him, wouldn't you think that would be just a big wake up call and just say, okay, yep, this is not avoidable. I'm going to have to step up, unfortunately. I mean, yeah, it sucks, but I mean, dude, all the evidence is staring you in the face. You're gonna have to be the leader of the human resistance. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But the entire movie, John is just whining, complaining, running, bitching, and moaning about how he doesn't want to lead the humans against machines. And it makes him look very unlikable and unrecognizable, in my opinion. Um, Yeah, I don't like Nick Stahl as well, no, let me say this. I just don't like John Connor in this movie. He's not my least favorite of the franchise. That is still Sarah Connor Chronicles, but of the films, mm, I don't know. It's between this and Salvation, so I'll have to get back to you on that. But yeah, I don't like John in this movie. He's a whiny little bitch. Con number 2 is Catherine Brewster. I cannot stand this woman. Even as a kid, I could not stand her because similar to John, all she's doing for most of this movie is screaming, whining, complaining, and trying to run away. Her, it's a little bit understandable too, because she's a little bit like Sarah Connor from the original Terminator. She's trying to run away because she's in denial and she doesn't believe that this situation is going on and it's really real. She doesn't believe that robots are coming to try to kill her from the future, and she doesn't believe that John Connor is to be her future husband. So she wants nothing to do with this. But she literally takes until the last 10 minutes of the movie before she gets on the ball and she realizes, yep, this is real, and she doesn't look happy about it in the slightest. She's so fucking whiny, she's so fucking bitchy, and she's so goddamn annoying. She has one of the most annoying screaming voices I've ever heard in any actress in any film. Fuck me. I cannot stand this woman. And this leads also into con number 3. John and Kate's relationship is garbage. These two have absolutely no chemistry whatsoever, in my opinion. Um, they're fated to be the the power couple that leads the humans against the machines. And I don't think that they work in the slightest as a couple. They have no chemistry. They spend most of this movie hating each other's guts. And then at the very end of the movie, they reluctantly accept each other as their fated, destined to be, or destined ones to be. And for me, it just does not work. They spend so much of this movie just mixing like water and oil that all of a sudden at the very end, the film tries to make them sympathetic and believable. And for me, it just doesn't work. These two, you could not have had a more mismatched couple if you tried. These two just suck. Con number 4 is um the future is set in stone. I've never been a big fan. This is why I think the writing is a little bit lazy. This and something else. But I've never been a big fan of Judgment Day being inevitable. Mainly because I feel like that just goes completely against what was stated in T1 and T2. The future is not set. There's no fate but what we make for ourselves. That does make sense, and that is what I believe how the future is made. The future depends on your actions. Like, you can choose to rob a bank, or you can choose not to. I don't believe that there's forces elsewhere at work that compel you to rob that bank, and there's no way that you can avoid robbing that bank. I don't believe in that whatsoever. I believe that actions made in the present determine the course of the future. That's why it makes sense, relatively. I still think that this would not have happened, but Sarah Connor's logic of killing Dyson, possibly preventing the war with Skynet, it is sound. It's not, ethical, and John Connor points out that it's not ethical in T2, but it was possible that Skynet could not have risen had Miles Dyson been killed. But with this movie, now the future is set in stone. Judgment Day will happen no matter what. Now, I can kind of see where this is coming from, and it's something that Sarah says in Terminator Dark Fate. Those assholes just never learn. I can see that the movie might be implying that no matter what, humanity was going down a dark path in creating their own demise with creating some kind of artificial intelligence. Oh dear. Are we heading down that path too? I sure hope not. But it just comes off as lazy writing to me, mainly because I feel like it spits in the face of its own franchise's mythology. The future being set in stone is, yeah, completely against what we've been preaching for the last two movies. And I just think it's lazy, rushed, and kind of stupid. And it's just a very weak and lazy excuse just to have another Terminator 3. Now, or, yeah, a Terminator 3. Now, had they explained that the future is not set in stone, but this could have still been an alternative future war with a different kind of Skynet being created, like with Terminator Dark Fate, what I theorize what they should have done with Terminator Dark Fate, if it wasn't like the Judgment Day, but it's just another form of Judgment Day, that would have been fine. But to postpone the rise of Skynet just feels lazy and weak to me. Um, and I've just never been a big fan of it. It just feels a bit forced, in my opinion. Con number five. This actually could be kind of a nitpick, but it sort of set a trend for this and the next movie, and kind of Sarah Connor Chronicles too. There's some dodgy CGI and green screen effects in this movie. With the green screen, namely, it's all the scenes during the day, especially when somebody's driving. When Arnold and John are driving through the desert once they've escaped the TX for the first time, all of the shots, you can so obviously tell they're not actually driving through the desert. They're just in front of a green screen. And when the camera is facing Arnold, it's tolerable and you can look past it being a green screen, but when the camera's on John, it's so obvious, at least to me, that Arnold and Nick Stahl are on a green screen. And it's just it sticks out like a sore thumb. But the dodgy CGI, well, I'm okay with, because one aspect of the effects too, with that fight scene between Arnold and the TX, when when Arnold is smashing the TX left and right into bathroom stalls, the TX is CGI. And actually, but in his audio commentary, Arnold revealed that for that scene, he was just smashing a pillow into the wall. I mean, it works, and you couldn't have done it any other way. But there are still some shots where it's pretty obvious that the um, TX is CGI, and she looks just a little cartoony. Um, but the worst CGI in this movie, in my opinion, is after Arnold restarts himself and he like pulls himself up and he reattaches his head. When Arnold's head is like hanging by a thread on his back, the CGI Arnold Schwarzenegger face is incredibly cartoony and fake, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. And it's very obvious that it's a completely animated character. And then when it cuts back to Arnold's head being reattached, it's just Arnold. He's just acting like he's reattaching his head onto his shoulders. It's kind of like a funny, jarring reverse shot of Ash from the original Alien. Um, yeah, I just, even as a kid, I never much cared for that. I could obviously tell, yeah, that's CGI. That's not real. And this is the franchise that is known for using Arnold Schwarzenegger dummies. So why the hell couldn't they have just used that? Especially with the delay with Stan Winston having time to work on more of the effects. Why couldn't they have just done it practically? It would have looked better and it would have aged better, and it probably would have been more fitting for the subject matter. Who knows? Um, and also, The worst green screen shot in this whole movie, when Kate and John arrive at Crystal Peak at the end of the movie, when she rides up in her plane, it's a green screen. It's so obviously a green screen, and the plane, Kate, and John stick out like a sore thumb. It looks like a static shot of just a random cave or some kind of hardened facility in a mountain somewhere, and they're just walking on a green screen. It's so painful and cheesy and corny, and sticks out like a sore thumb. This will lead me into my first of two biggest problems with T3. The ending is rushed and bleak. Now, the reason why I think it feels rushed is it could have been a great opportunity for Arnold and the TX to have one final knockdown, drag out fight in order to try to save John and Kate and get them into the fallout shelter. The only way that um, Arnold can delay her is just fighting her hand to hand. And they slowly like tear each other to pieces. And then finally, Arnold finishes her off with the second fuel cell. I'd have been much fine with that. But no, she tears her legs off. Arnold jumps under the blast door in order to stop it from shutting. And he just grabs onto her cables, yanks her towards him, and shoves the fuel cell into her mouth, and then kaboom. I mean, it's a cool finisher, and it gives us a final good one line from Arnold. You terminated. But it always felt very rushed and anticlimactic to me, even as a kid. And it also would have showcased. It would have been an opportunity to showcase a fully CGI model of the TX's endoskeleton form, because she looks cool. She's blue instead of red, and she's a lot more shiny and sparkly compared to Arnold's T800 form. So it would have been a really cool opportunity to showcase two Terminators duking it out, but no, they decided to just do it the lazy way, in my opinion. And the reason why I say the ending is bleak is because it literally is bleak. And the reason why I have a problem with it is it's very jarring. It's a similar problem to something I have with Transformers The Last Night. Both movies, for the first, especially with this, for the first hour and 25 minutes or so, the movie's campy and funny and violent. And it doesn't take itself super seriously. Same with Transformers The Last Night. It's just a standard Transformers film up until the doomsday plan for Cybertron to come and destroy the world. At that point, like, the movie's tone shifts like a total 180, and then it's all doomy and gloomy and apocalyptic. Same thing for T3. A good chunk of the movie is campy and funny, and then the last 10 to 15 minutes, it's dark and bleak and sad and depressing. And to me, it's like tonal whiplash. It comes completely out of nowhere and feels just like a sad ending for the sake of having a sad, bleak ending. Like, the movie literally ends with a nuclear war with billions of people being wiped out with nuclear bombs. He's like, "Oh, that sucks." And it just ends and leaves a sour taste in my mouth every time I see this. Once again, even as a kid, I never liked this movie's ending. It always just felt a bit too just bleak and sad for my taste. Still to this day. I do get that it was probably done that way to serve as a good segue into the next Terminator movie. And having Salvation in mind, yes, it does segue into Salvation well. Still, it's just not fun to watch. And hands down, the biggest con and problem that I have with T3, this has been stated many, many, many times, but yes, it is true. Terminator 3 rehashes the living shit out of T2. It's the same formula. Two Terminators are sent back from the future, one to protect John Connor and one to attack him. It's once again a Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator to protect him and a liquid metal Terminator to try to kill him. Sure, it's a hybrid of both to kill him, but still it utilizes liquid metal. It shapeshifts in order to trick its targets into killing them. Um, Arnold is once again riding a motorcycle. He's wearing all black leather. He walks up slowly, wearing sunglasses and toting a shotgun. Not a lever action, but still. Um, there's a big giant shootout with the police with some kind of high capacity, large caliber machine gun. Um, and yeah, the whole movie is one big cat and mouse game trying to stay away from the evil Terminator. Um, it all feels very familiar and it feels like a lazy, massive rehash. I don't mind it that like quite as much as a lot of other people, though I do acknowledge that yes, it does like the Terminator franchise, aside from Salvation, has this formula of of Terminators sent back in time to kill somebody and someone is to protect that target. I like that formula, but this one in particular, because like Genesis has new elements that makes that feel fresh. Dark Fate, well, is a pleasant return to form, but I can see that as rehashing T2 quite a bit. But this is one of the biggest reasons why, to me, this is the most middle of the road Terminator movie. Kind of like with Nightmare on Elm Street 4, this one feels the most safe. It feels like how the producers felt for Friday the 13th Part 2. They just wanted to stay safe and paint by numbers because that's what works. And this one feels the most formulaic and repetitive as a result. Um, yeah, it not much else to say. It rehashes T2 a lot. And I will always agree. That's the number one criticism that I will always agree regarding this movie. It's a rehash of T2, and it does feel pretty lazy. So, with all that being said, Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, yeah, like I said, it's the most middle of the road Terminator movie. I do like it. There are a lot of things to like about it. Arnold is great. The action scenes are great. The effects are great. The TX is awesome. But as I've stated a couple times in this video, it's got some high highs and some low lows. So T3 is a pretty mixed bag as a result. But still, I have a lot of nostalgia for this movie. I do enjoy watching it. I am a die-hard Terminator fan, and I can get a kick out of watching this anytime and any day. But still, it has lost some value for me and has landed itself strictly in the middle of the Terminator franchise. But with that being said, I will give this movie a very solid 7. It's fun, it's entertaining, but it's got some flaws. So with all that being said, post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. And as always, remember, get down. I'll be back. And I will see you guys in the next video.